We have a task which falls into really two categories. You can be teaching complete beginners, and of course then you've got your system that you want them to follow, and it's progressive. One element builds on the next and they become a golfer. The other one, especially as you become more competent as a golf instructor, because you'll be sought out for this, is to find people's faults and devise some fixes. And that's the one I refer to periodically as reading people back from the ledge. That's quite commonly what happens. Now, golf is very sequential. It's how do you get ready? How do you swing back? How do you come down? And it's definitely a game of consequences. So when you see an element at the end of the backswing that you don't like the look of, that's not the place to fix it. It is much earlier. In fact, very often it can be as early as the second that they reach for the club with one hand. And I'm thinking particularly of the left hand. So quite often when I'm watching a golfer for the first time who's come to me with, hardly shockingly because it's so common, a big slice with the driver, you'll watch them hit the first couple of shots, and the normal place to stand is directly on the line down past them to the target. Now, you'll see the club at the top of the swing, and that's one of the places I recommend that you always look during the swing, and that the club will be hanging down in what is Lee Trevino called like washing on a line. Now, how it got there is a function of those earlier features. And so usually I'll take a few steps to my right if it's a right-handed golfer, so that I'm looking at them at such an angle that I can see their left hand and arm. And that's where you immediately go, oh, well, there you go. That's why it's slicing, because the left hand was palm facing the sky and the left elbow tucked down, the way that Ben Hogan used to advocate. There are no modern champions who do it that way. So certainly a weaker grip is not uncharacteristic of modern players, but the elbow is certainly no longer the way it's done. And so what happens, for instance, in that instance, is that because the arm is in this position, it can't get past the body, even if they're a slender build, without rotating. And particularly with the weaker grip, that rotation takes the club away low and inside, which is unsustainable. They change directions, go up. The club is held in this, what is sort of colloquially called a cuppy position, with the knuckles rolled back toward where the wristwatch would be. And this is where the slice is going to come from. So you'll start by asking people to reach down to their left side with their hand hanging like a mirror image of their right one, which is for most people with the thumbs turned in, and keep them that way as they pick up the club, attach this hand, and then very importantly extend and bias this arm. Golf's not sequential. It's sequential, it's not symmetrical. And so that's a lovely example. And then once people are hitting generally well, but you still know that there are elements that need to be fixed, and they're subtler and they are a little later in the process. Once the basics are done correctly, then it's appropriate to use opposites. If you see somebody rotating the club closed on the way back, which means that they may have started with the arm correct, but they're actually rotating it counterclockwise so that they're getting into a two across the line position, somewhat ambiguous term, meaning that the shaft at the top of the swing is pointing to the right of the target, then that's usually because they've unbiased their arm on the backswing, a typical example. And so you'll actually ask them to rotate the arm during the backswing, not because they'll do it, and you'll be sure to tell them, you think you did, but what you did was actually nothing. Well done. And so look for the opposite that gets the quickest result. Our job is to send people away hitting better. And if you're sure that you've picked the right element to work on, use opposites.